Rob, you can pull it up. Yeah, those are the ships. So while this happened, this morning, if you look at the market oil prices, if you want to go to it, it's up a little bit. It's 91.37. There's not been a negative reaction to this yet. The president came out yesterday, and I believe he said that indefinitely the ceasefire continues indefinitely, but not a date. And so we don't know when it's going to stop. We don't know when is this it, Rob?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go for it. Play this clip, and then we'll get right into it.
So to be clear, you're saying that you need at least the prospects for a signed deal today and tomorrow, or else you would resume bombing Iran.
Well, I expect to be bombing because I think that's a better attitude to go in with. But we're ready to go. I mean, the military is raring to go. They are absolutely incredible. I built the military in my first term. I'm using it now. The military, when I took it over from Barack Hussein Obama, it was so depleted, so sad. And I built it in my first term. You remember those big numbers. You talked to me about it once. That's a lot of money for military. I built it. We did a great job with our military. And we're using it now and rebuilding it, too.
We know it's indefinitely. Sean Hannity said, based on some intel, I think, Rob, if you got that clip, that at any point, attack could happen. Go for it, Rob.
And welcome to Hannity. Tonight we start with this Fox News alert. Now, new reporting tonight. Sources telling me that the ceasefire extension in Iran announced by the president, that will be short-lived unless a deal is reached quickly. Now, earlier today, the president announced that American strikes will not yet resume, and he will allow peace negotiations to continue. According to my sources, mostly this was out of respect for the Pakistani mediators and as a final push for peace for the war-torn Iranian people. The president is also giving more time to Iran's regime to attempt to coordinate and actually communicate with each other.
Tom, what do you think is going on here?
So what I think is going on is the president is doing what he always does. Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. This is what I think, maybe I won't. I think this is literally a day-by-day ceasefire. He's trying to keep them unbalanced. And unfortunately, they said that Vance was pulled back. I guess he's not going to the next, the previous public, what did they say? Previously, they had made a public statement about what the next negotiation would be. And so that's the one where we can see them all at the table and we see the media talking about it. But there's things going on behind closed doors. I think Trump's trying to keep them off balance. I think he's trying to get a deal done. I think Witkoff is working in the background. But the public, everybody sits at the big, beautiful table and everything. That's not happening tomorrow, Thursday, and Vance was pulled back.
There you go. David, your thoughts?
Well, the question is, who are the Americans talking to? Like, who's the Iranian delegation and who's in charge in Iran right now? Because my sense is that it's not the clerics, it's the IRGC. And they are definitely hardened. So, my thoughts are this. I think the bombing campaign is over. I think that Trump pays attention to the stock market, and I think he's paying attention to the public opinion polls. And I think he has to take note of the fact that his MAGA base is starting to deteriorate in terms of the support for the war. So I think he's looking for an off-ramp. And I think that we're just further in this age of disinformation. It's not just the Iranians, but it's also, what we're hearing out of Truth Social. I mean, we were bombarded with no fewer than 7 messages from his social media account last Friday, and next thing you know, the Dow was up 1,000 points. It's hard to know where this leads. I think that I agree that I think Trump is looking for an off-ramp. We don't know what sort of deal. What sort of deal are we really expecting? Because the Iranian list of demands and the U.S. list of demands, there's no overlap. As I go through this in my head, I'm there thinking that Trump, I don't think he can bomb anymore. I think it's a classic case of Einstein's definition of insanity. Like, where's the bombing? What's it going to accomplish that it hasn't accomplished? Right now, what Iran has found out is that it has an economic engine that it can stranglehold the world through the strait. I think a lot of us already knew that because it's not the first time this has happened, but on this scale. So you have a situation where, as you mentioned about the strikes by Iran on those ships in the strait, they're demonstrating that they're still in control. And the U.S. still has this blockade.
But does this break the ceasefire by them attacking those 3 ships? I mean, if you're talking ceasefire,
That's really up to Trump, right? You would think that it would break the ceasefire. You would think that Hezbollah, which wasn't mentioned, I think just sent a few rockets into northern Israel. Did that break the ceasefire? So this is almost very loose definitions. It's clear to me, firstly, that Trump wants an off-ramp. We just don't know who he's talking to, who's in charge in Iran, and what any deal is going to look like. Because how can we walk away from this war with the Iranians still having those 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium? And how do we walk away with Iran not abandoning its nuclear ambitions? I don't really know how Donald Trump is going to wiggle his way out of this. I think in the end, what he wants to do is walk away and declare victory on his terms. And then the Iranians are going to declare victory on their terms. And my biggest concern is, do we just end up back where we were with Barack Hussein Obama and the deal that he struck in 2015? Do we just end up right back there? And that's all this damage.
are you speculating, or you're thinking we're going to end up there where we're going to release the $20 billion?
I'm always scenario building. There's a wide range of outcomes, but you have to have a base case scenario. The thing is that Trump is under a lot of domestic political pressure. I think he's coming under some pressure in his own party. We have the midterm elections, all these things that Iran doesn't have to worry about. And then we have to consider all along, how we've come to this place. And this isn't like a war over land. This is a war over radical ideology and fanaticism. This is a different sort of war. When we had the Cold War with Russia, it wasn't really dealing with anybody who was irrational. Khrushchev was not irrational. Now, that wasn't religious ideology. That you could argue that was more economic ideology. But you were dealing at least with rational actors. And this time around, you're dealing with irrational actors, and you're dealing with a regime that has no value on human life, even the human life of their own population, as we've seen. So I think the template you want to look back to, and this is what I would advise the president if I was there, is just, know what you're getting into here. Because from 1980 to 1988, Iran and Iraq fought an 8-year war. Now, Saddam Hussein wanted to create a buffer. You could argue that was partly about land, but it was also about ideology, because it was right after the revolution. And Hussein was very concerned that this radical ideology was going to spread into Iraq. After year 2 of that war, Saddam Hussein actually offered an olive branch to the Ayatollah to end the war, to call for a permanent truce. Iran walked away, and the war lasted another 6 years. Over 500,000 deaths. So that's what we're dealing with right now. So there's a wide range of outcomes. I think that what's obvious to me, I mean, this is now, what is a deadline right now? What's a deadline? Now the deadline is over, and now it's basically, there's no timeline attached. What does that tell us?
What's ideal for you, in your opinion? What you just?
Well, I'm, I'm pretty hardcore. I'm in the John Bolton camp. Okay.
Really?
That absolutely, because I think that you've got to you've got to finish what you started. What was the goal? The problem I have is that President Trump says, well, we did it. We did achieve regime change, Well, that's a lot of information right there. We try, he's going to say we actually got one of the things that we wanted, which was regime change, but we got a worse regime. And then he says, well, these are more reasonable people than we had before. Well, I don't really think so. And then it's a matter of what people have to know is that it's the Revolution Guard are the ones really in control, and they're hardened. I think that you got to finish what you start. And I think that the ultimate goal was really to get that 60% enriched uranium out of Iranian hands and to permanently end their nuclear ambitions. Now, the reality is that you actually would need to have a new and more peaceful regime to do that. I think that's next to impossible. The question is, because when you think about what the spark was the uprisings that we saw, the popular uprisings back in January. And how do you incentivize? I mean, now you could actually argue that the Iranians were prepared because they killed, let's say the number is 30,000. Now the Iranian population is scared to go out and do it again. And that to me is really, when you're talking about regime change, I think that that always should have been the goal, because when you think about how do we end this nuclear ambition, I think that nuclear bomb in Iranian hands is a danger for the entire world. How do you accomplish that? And then you look at history. How do you change regimes? You don't do it from the outside. You do it from the inside. And what you need to do is you need to get to a place where the army, the regular army, I'm not even talking about the IRGC, I'm talking about the regular army, there's 1 million of them. Now, I don't know, I'd like to hear, what I'd like to hear is that that's who Wickoff and Jared Kushner and Vance are talking to. Are there back channels into the actual regular Iranian army? Because when you look at previous revolutions, King Louis XVI, the revolution was successful only when the army turned their back on the king.
That hasn't happened yet.
No, when you look at Nicholas II, okay, it's only when the army realized that their survival was at stake that they abandoned
How do you
the
get
Tsar.
there? How do you get there?
Well, I sort of...
Because you gave the weapons to Kurds, they kept it, so it's not like they're passing it to the people.
I like that. I like that idea, but Turkey shot it down. And I mean, there's always risks about having a revolution, and you'll create this political vacuum. And let's face it, Iran is not a homogeneous society. But the thing is that, how do you incentivize the people and the army to turn against the clerics? And to me, that's why, look, the whole notion of bombing power plants and bridges, or even, using the strait, the blockade to block food imports and medical supplies. And then there's all sorts of commotion and noise around, would the U.S. be breaking international law? Well, never mind about all the international laws that the Iranians have broken. But you see, there's just more political pressure on Trump. But, the thing is that, and this is going to sound pretty radical, and I don't want to sound mean. I'm not a mean person. But the question is, how do you incentivize the Iranian people into another uprising, which they did in January? But now they have fear because they know that the Guard are going to kill them. I always thought the Kurds were at least a good start. It would be actually a very good distraction to the Revolutionary Guard.
Yeah.
Can Mossad or the IDF get involved? I don't know. They're under a short leash
They're
themselves.
for sure involved. I mean,
but they're also under they're under Trump's control as well. To me, that would be the most effective end game. How it's accomplished, look, I don't claim to be a military expert. I'm an interested observer. But I would say that without regime change, nothing's going to change. And then it's a matter of how you accomplish it. Would you accomplish it through, say, real boots on the ground. Like you'd need
Yeah.
you'd probably need like a million troops. Would
Brandon,
it
what do
be-
you think? It'll be interesting. What do you think yourself?
I mean, I agree, and that's why I said a week or two ago, I said that I think they should use an Iran-Contra model. I mean, any revolution that's ever happened, it's been through rebel groups, through militia groups that the CIA or the Mossad type of group helps organize, and helps them get together, and helps smuggle weapons to them. But that doesn't exist in Iran. There's no organized militia or rebel group. And that's really how an uprising could actually happen. Like, right now it's just a bunch of people without weapons that get slaughtered by the government when they organize in public. So I agree. There really is no off-ramp with this in terms of changing leadership in an effective way. Like, no matter what, even if you take out the guy who's in charge right now, somebody just like him from the IRGC is going to be put in his place. And until that whole mindset or that whole IRGC regime is gone, then it's the same situation, probably even worse. So even if we do agree to a deal, there's not an off-ramp that exists with the same group. And I just looked it up, actually. 31% of the military is part of the IRGC, but the IRGC does control all the military weapons. So that's what that looks like in that regard. But yeah, it's a bad situation because I don't see what that option is to like totally eliminate it, because it's not like they're in one place. It's not like it's one group of small group of people.
But saying you're extending the ceasefire indefinitely, and then these guys break the ceasefire
Immediately.
and they're saying we did not. They're saying we're enforcing the law because they're acting as if they created new laws. So because of that, they're enforcing new laws. So I was like, we didn't do anything wrong. We're just kind of doing our part. This is not breaking a ceasefire. But in a way, Iran is trying to say is, look, they're not showing their real players. Not real players. They're not showing their ethical players here.
Oh, they're not.
So if that's the case, what do you do? So if his position is, well, Trump wants to get out of this because he's paying attention to the market. Market's doing better. Everything is up. Earnings are coming through really good. Numbers are coming through really good. People are pretty optimistic. The market, I don't know where S&P is today, was at 7,000. And hey, but that's a different story between Main Street and Wall Street. S&P's at 71.49 right now. Okay,
Yeah.
up almost 3/4 of a point. So, but if he goes back and attacks, let's just say we hear the news, boom, we're bombing again. What happens to the market? 2 to 3% adjustment?
Yeah.
Oh, it goes back the other way. S&P goes back down to 69.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but if he's gonna do it, Iran's telling you we're not ethical negotiators.
Right.
This guy who was Obama's, or I don't know, was he Obama's or Clinton's? Clinton's guy in 1996. He says Iran's never been an honest negotiator. They always lie. So what are you gonna do now? You're dealing with somebody that's ethical now? Who knows? We don't do any major sponsorships on the podcast. You won't see us doing a podcast and announcing 7 sponsors. We haven't done that yet. We're talking to some big companies we'll entertain and have that. We have some things that we'll invest in, and if we do, we'll talk about it. There's certain companies I invest in, I'll gladly talk about it. But when it comes out to the Vol Conference, if there's one thing that I can tell you, it's 12,000 people